If you've ever wondered if athletes can get faster and more athletic and stronger and move better, this is the series for you. I am starting out today a series of athletic development, and we're going to be starting with speed development and how to get athletes faster. So whether you are a parent, a coach, or an athlete, and you have questions about can I get faster? How much faster? What's the right stuff to do? I'm going to try to help you understand all there is to understand about athletic development in this video series that will continue here for you to answer all of your questions. My name is Jim Kielbaso. I've been a strength and conditioning coach and an athletic development specialist for over 30 years, and I'm going to try to bring all the knowledge that I have gained through talking to people, through my jobs. I've been a college strength and conditioning coach. I've worked at several major universities. I've gotten to work with some elite level athletes, and then also kids as young as 6 and 7 years old, coaching youth soccer and t-ball and basketball with my own 3 boys through their athletic development, as well as running a private training center for over 20 years. I've had a chance to see so much in athletic development, and I'm really hoping that I can help you understand as a parent or a coach or an athlete how to make decisions on how to be the best version of yourself. So it's going to be some long videos, so buckle in and get ready, because I'm going to try to give you everything that I know and everything that I've learned in the last 30 years. We're going to start out with speed development. It's a big topic for a lot of parents and coaches. They want faster athletes because there is a problem, and that problem is athletes aren't always fast enough. And when they're not fast enough, they aren't able to make plays. They're not going to enjoy sports as much. Sometimes parents feel like their kids are getting left behind. Coaches don't know what kind of plays to run or where to put them on the field. And athletes just start to lose confidence and not enjoy sports as much. So being able to get faster is a hot topic, and I get questions on it all the time. So to start it out, athletes can get faster. Some people don't believe that. There are still old school coaches and parents who think like, well, speed is just something you're born with. Well, that's partially true. I'm not going to tell you today that everybody can be turned into Usain Bolt or be a world record sprinter. That's not the case, because everybody's a little bit different and everyone is going to respond to training a little bit differently. I'm also going to make sure that you understand that every athlete is going to develop differently. They're going to have different levels of motivation. They're going to have different genetic potential. They're going to have different coaches. Different things work better or not as well for people as far as training programs go. So it's important to remember that this isn't just a strict science experiment to develop an athlete or to get faster. Everybody's going to be a little bit different, but I'm going to try to take a lot of my knowledge and boil it down to the simplest terms so that it gives you a structure or a framework to work off of. So when you're trying to get an athlete faster, before we think of anything else, all of the programs that you create or anything that you see or want to do with your kids or with your athletes, the first thing is it always has to be safe. I think a lot of parents worry that, is this training going to get my kid hurt? Is it going to be safe? Is there going to be long-term damage? And if you're a coach and you're not really worried about safety, then I'm going to really encourage you to take a step back and remember that the kids that you're working with today, they're going to be adults later. And I've had enough back pain and problems in my life and seen it with other people that I've worked with to know that long-term health is not only important just for enjoyment, but doing things safely allows athletes to train harder, longer, more often, and keep going in their athletic development. Whereas injuries, especially training-related injuries, really shut people down. They stop not only progress, but oftentimes they completely stop an athlete's career because a lot of injuries just make people feel like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's just no longer fun and it's too much and I'm breaking down too often. So the first thing is it has to be safe. If you are a coach, you're probably also thinking it's got to be effective. And parents should want that also. You shouldn't be out there just training for the sake of training and getting your kids tired just to wear them out. Training should be effective, and it should be done in the proper way. And that's what I'll be trying to describe. And the last thing is, it needs to be very efficient. Athletes only have so much time, especially when they have lots of other things going on. If you're trying to get an athlete faster and they're also going to their sport practice 3, 4, 5 days a week for multiple hours, the training that you're doing needs to be very efficient because it's not the only thing that they're doing. Now, if you could take somebody completely out of everything else that they're doing and just focus on trying to get faster or be a better all-around athlete, that would be one thing, but that's just not realistic. You know that already. So the training and the programs that you make and the decisions you make about training, they all have to be in the name of efficiency. So it has to be safe, it has to be effective, and it has to be efficient. And whenever you're making training choices or you're looking into a training program or you're talking with a coach or somebody else that's going to help you, those should be things that come to mind for them, and they can answer questions about the safety, about the effectiveness, and about the efficiency of that training. When you're thinking about speed development, though, I want you to come at it with a framework that is pretty easy to understand, and then we'll dive into the 3 components. So the first component, if you think about it like a math equation, is you have to be able to put a lot of force into the ground. Force is going to be developed through getting stronger. So there has to be a baseline level of strength development in an athlete if they're going to move fast and efficiently. I'm going to do another separate video on how much strength is enough, but that'll come later. For now, just understand that the top line is you have to have some strength and be able to create force that's going to be put into the ground to send you in whatever direction that you want. The second thing that has to happen is that force needs to be put into the ground as quickly as possible. Some people will think of it as power, others will think of it as force application, but you can't just be really strong and put the force into the ground slowly. That's not going to get you anywhere. And honestly, that's why powerlifters are not the fastest athletes on earth. So you have to be able to put that force into the ground as quick as possible. That's going to come through things like plyometrics, explosive exercises, resisted running, incline running. We'll talk more about that too. And then the third part of the equation is the force has to be put into the ground in the right direction. So if you're trying to run that way, you have to put the force into the ground somehow behind you to send you in the opposite direction. Just like if you want to jump up, you have to push down into the ground. But force direction, or force, the direction of the force application, that really, in a nutshell, can be called mechanics or movement ability, your movement technique, your movement qualities. And it's not just sprinting, even though we're going to be talking a lot about sprinting on this video. It can also be changing directions. It can be deceleration. It can be jumping. It can be a lot of different things. But the way or the direction that you're putting the force into the ground plays a huge role in your ability to move faster. So let's go through it again. You have to put a lot of force into the ground. You have to put it into the ground as fast as possible, and you have to put it in the ground in the right direction. So let's go through those 3 components of training so you have a little bit clearer picture of what you're going to do about that. So let's start with force development. In order to create more force, you have to increase your strength. Increasing your strength is going to come through strength training. Things like squats and lunges and one-leg squats and leg presses. Those are going to be the things that are going to develop maximal strength so that you essentially raise the bar of how much force that you can put into the ground. That takes time. If you've ever lifted weights and you've tried to go from squatting, 100 pounds to 150 pounds, that takes a long time. Your body can only adapt so quickly and to so much work. So you can't just say, well, I need to get stronger. It's going to take me a week and then I'm going to be there. This could take months, if not years. but it's something that if you are trying to get faster and be a better athlete, strength training is going to be a part of that. Not the only part, but it's definitely going to be a part of it. And it's going to take time, so don't expect results to happen like instantaneously. Your body has to first have a stimulus, which is going to be the workout, the strength training workout. It's then going to have to go home and recover, and it's going to then adapt. And that adaptation takes quite a long time. You can really only work your legs, for example, 2 to 4 times a week, typically 2 to 3 times a week, so that they can recover and not be so tired that you can't do other things also. So you have to remember that this is all part of a bigger puzzle that has to come together to create an athlete. It can't just be, we're only going to focus on strength right now, even though sometimes during the sports training year or the sports cycle, you should develop or you should dedicate some time to one physical attribute like strength, if that's what you really need. So strength development, it's going to take time, and it's going to be through things like squats, lunges, one-leg squats, leg presses, Romanian deadlifts, things like that are going to get you strong. The next part of the equation is putting force into the ground really, really quickly. That's going to come through, like I said before, things like plyometrics, resisted running, incline running, and you could use things like weighted sleds. You could use run rockets or resisted sprinting devices like we have here at Impact, my training facility. The plyometrics are going to come in 2 forms. You're going to have power-based plyometrics, which is going to be something like a maximal squat jump, where you're only working on a few reps and you're working for all-out power. And then there's going to be other things that are going to work on what's called your reactive strength index. That's how quickly you can put the force into the ground and get back up off the ground. So those are going to be called extensive plyometrics. It's when you're doing multiple reps really, really fast, trying to move as quickly as possible. So things like line hops or 6-inch box jumps. You can do like impulses into the ground. It's going to be things that are going to be multiple hops and multiple reps that are going to be trying to go as quickly as you possibly can to put that force into the ground really, really quickly. You have to be able to combine those things and understand how to use them properly so that you're not doing too much work and you can't recover from it. But those things like plyometrics, you're going to want to have both ends of the spectrum, the power and the extensive based exercises. And then things like the resisted running or incline running, they could be hill sprints, they could be incline treadmill running, something that's going to make your body have to create more force than regular overground running or overground sprinting. Now, those things are going to also be done in a quick manner because you don't want to turn those kind of exercises into conditioning, because now you're actually going to start moving slower. So anything that's going to be power-based or quickness-based or speed-based can't turn into a conditioning session where you're just trying to make athletes tired. If you are looking at training with somebody that's telling you they're going to help you, and they're always just putting out images of kids just being really, really tired, and that's all you're hearing is that, oh, kids are just always tired, and that's the goal, is to just make them tired, then that's not really what you're looking for. Yeah, athletes are going to get tired, and there's a definite time and place for conditioning, but there should also be a component that's mostly speed related, and it's all about quality over quantity. So then that last piece of the puzzle, so we've talked about force development, we've talked about how to apply it into the ground really quickly. The last piece is mechanics, or putting it into the ground in the right direction. And that's where a highly experienced, skilled coach is going to be able to give you or your athletes or your children great cues, great instruction, and then great feedback on how they're moving. So we'll have more videos about acceleration versus maximal speed, and we'll talk a lot about mechanics. But if athletes aren't learning how to put the force in the ground properly and aren't using good mechanics, you're really working against yourself, or the athlete's working against him or herself to a real great extent. So mechanics is something that's very important in this puzzle, and a good coach is going to be able to really shorten the learning curve and help that piece of the puzzle much faster than if you're just trying to do it on your own. Because athletes, most of the time, if they're running incorrectly, and I get a lot of questions about that. I have a lot of parents that ask me, like, hey, is it weird that my kid runs funny, or I think my kid runs funny? Is that something you can fix? Yeah, that's something that we can fix because that's what we do, and we have experience doing that. But kids can't fix that themselves most of the time because they don't know what they're doing incorrectly. They don't know how to change it. They don't know the cues and the drills, and they don't have the feedback to make those changes. So you really, really need a good quality coach to help you with that. When you are trying to change mechanics, we're going to talk about how long this sometimes takes, and a lot of parents and coaches kind of misunderstand this process. In order to change anything, any way you move, so you can think about trying to change anything that you're trying to do, whether it's a basketball shot, or it's kicking a soccer ball, or it's running, in this case, sprinting. Anytime that you try to change an old movement pattern and learn a new one, it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks of consistent practice to get that into your body to where you can kind of break an old habit and start to develop the new one. But it has to be consistent practice, and it has to be consistently done in the right way, not in the wrong way, so that your body starts to learn those patterns. Your nervous system will learn the new movements, but it takes time, and every time you do it the old way or the incorrect way, it extends that period of time that it takes to get it into your body. Now, after those first 2 or 3 weeks, a lot of parents and coaches think, okay, the kid has it now. They know how to do it. But then you get out on the field or on the court and they go back to their old habits, and you wonder, why are you still running that way? Or why are you still shooting a basketball that way? Well, that's because after that first initial 2 or 3 week period, it takes another 6 to 8 weeks of consistent practice, again, doing it correctly, to get so ingrained in an athlete's body that there's no more cognitive processing. They can just do it without thinking about it. But if you're before that point, and now you go out on the field and you're thinking about the game instead of the way you're running, you're going to go back to your old habits and your old ways of movement, your old movement patterns. So you've got to give this process time also. And every time that an athlete practices it the wrong way, that 6 to 8 week period starts to get even longer and longer. So if you think about it, if an athlete learns and takes 2 weeks out of their schedule to get better at sprinting, but then they go back to playing soccer or football or whatever it is that they're playing, and every day in practice, they're running the wrong way, the way they used to run, but they're only practicing it for 15 or 20 minutes a couple times a week with a coach. All of that practice in the wrong way is going to outweigh the good practice, and it's going to take a lot longer to get it ingrained in their body to where they don't have to practice it. So if you're a parent and your kid is doing speed training, or you're thinking about doing speed training and you noticed, like, this didn't work. I see that they're doing well when they're training, but out on the field, it hasn't transferred yet. That's probably because they need more time and they need to do it correctly more often for an extended period of time so that they don't have to be thinking about it anymore. Now, if you start thinking about these things in pieces, like the force development and the quick power development and the mechanics, when you first start training, a lot of this can be fairly general. Strength training can be pretty basic. Just, add a little bit of weight to the bar or try to do a couple more reps each set, and you're going to get stronger. The plyometrics and the resisted training, if you've never done it before, there's going to be some quick improvements in your power and your elasticity and your ability to apply that force in the ground. And if you have really bad mechanics and you're just starting to get some coaching instruction, a little bit of change is going to go a long way. But the better you get, the more important the programming is, and the better the programming and more defined it's going to have to be to continue to get results. So I really encourage you to have evaluations done on a consistent basis. For example, at Impact, when an athlete comes in, we do all kinds of testing. We do speed testing, and we videotape athletes moving. We do strength testing. We do reactive strength and power-based stuff. We do one leg and we do two legs. There's flexibility and mobility. Everything is kind of analyzed so that you can start to dial in the training for exactly what that athlete needs. Sometimes at the beginning, they need general training. They need to get stronger. They need to get in better shape, and they need to change the way they're moving considerably. Other times, athletes are already moving pretty well, but maybe they're also really strong, but they can't generate force quickly, or they can generate force quickly, but their mechanics are bad. And you're going to need to start dialing in what it is that athlete needs so you can start making it much more specific for the needs of each athlete. That's where the programming starts to get a lot more important rather than general training. And that's why we do that. That's why we do evaluations on an ongoing basis, to make sure that we're going down the right path and continuing to make progress in that way. So that right there in a nutshell is how to get faster. Put more force into the ground, put it in the ground fast, and put it in the right direction. You add those three things up, you're going to get faster. Make sure that you're doing that evaluation or ongoing evaluations so that you are getting it done at the right time and changing the programming when it's necessary to continue that improvement. And then in the next videos, we'll start to talk more about the specific training and how to go about doing these things so that you're doing it the most effective and efficient way possible. And if you live anywhere near me in Novi, Michigan, you can come in and you can get a free evaluation. If you don't live near me, make sure that you are evaluating everything so you can start to dial in your training. And in the next video, we'll continue this and hopefully create or paint a more clear picture of everything that goes into developing all-around athletes and hopefully honing it in to you or whoever you're working with. So I hope you found that helpful, but definitely leave some comments or some questions, and we'll continue this conversation really soon.